The farm was quiet that morning, the sun spreading its golden warmth over endless fields, the kind of silence only broken by the rustle of wind through the crops. Emily had grown up here, her life simple and filled with chores, her soul tied to the earth she worked. She was quiet, kind, and never raised her voice against anyone, but that quietness often drew the wrong kind of attention. The boys from the nearby town, cocky, arrogant, used to throwing their weight around, saw her silence as weakness. On this day, their laughter echoed across the fields as they dragged her toward the old oak tree. Her protests went unheard, her tears ignored, as they bound her wrists with rope and tied her against the rough bark. The tallest of the group sneered, leaning close, his voice dripping with cruelty. "You think you're better than us just because you keep to yourself? Call your husband, farm girl. Let's see if he's brave enough to come save you." The others laughed, their varsity jackets flashing green and gold in the sunlight. They thought it was a game, a way to entertain themselves, never realizing the line they had crossed. Emily shook her head, struggling, her voice breaking. "You don't know what you're asking for. Please, just let me go." But bullies never listened. They thrived on fear, on the sight of someone smaller than them trapped and helpless. One of them pulled out his phone, waving it mockingly. "Come on, farm girl, give us his number. We'll call him for you." Emily closed her eyes, her heart pounding. Her husband, Daniel, wasn't just some farmhand. He wasn't just a man who came home every night tired and dusty from the fields. He was dealt a force, one of the most elite warriors in the world. He had seen war, survived the impossible, and carried the kind of presence that made even the toughest men step back. But to her, he was just Daniel, the man who held her hand at night and made her laugh when life felt heavy. The bullies grew impatient, taunting her, threatening her, laughing louder. Emily's lips trembled as she whispered, "You don't want to do this. You don't know him." One of them grinned wider. "Then let's find out." He dialed Daniel's number, putting the phone on speaker. After a few rings, a calm, steady voice answered. "Emily, is everything all right?" The boy sneered into the phone. "Your wife's a little tied up right now, hero. Why don't you come down to the old oak tree if you want to see her again?" The group erupted in laughter, proud of their cruelty. But Daniel's voice on the other end didn't waver. It was quiet, low, and edged with steel. "Listen to me carefully. Untie her, walk away, and maybe you'll still have a future worth living." The boys froze for a moment, glancing at each other, unsure how to react. Then one of them snorted and ended the call. "Big talk. He's probably just some farmer. We'll see how brave he is." They didn't know that Daniel was already moving. He had been less than 10 minutes away, returning early from training when the call came through. His truck roared down the dirt roads, each second sharpening the storm building inside him. Emily, tied to the tree, lifted her head at the sound of an engine approaching. Dust kicked up on the horizon, and her heart leapt with relief. The bullies turned, their cocky smiles faltering as the black truck came to a stop. The door swung open, and Daniel stepped out. He wasn't in uniform, but he didn't need it. His broad shoulders, calm eyes, and the way he carried himself spoke volumes. The air seemed to shift around him, the kind of silence that made the hairs on the back of your neck rise. He walked forward slowly, deliberately, his gaze locked on the group. "I gave you a chance," he said, his voice calm but heavy with warning. The tallest bully tried to puff his chest, masking his fear. "We're not scared of you." But his voice cracked, betraying him. Daniel stopped a few feet away, his eyes sweeping over Emily, bound and crying. His jaw tightened. He had seen hostages before, he had rescued innocents from far worse, but this was different. This was his wife, his family, his world. He looked back at the boys, and in that moment, they realized their mistake. They weren't facing a farmer. They were facing a man trained to survive battlefields, a man who had walked through hell and returned stronger. In a blur of controlled precision, Daniel closed the distance. He grabbed the nearest bully by the collar and slammed him against the tree beside Emily, his voice a growl. "You touch her again, and I will make sure you never forget the pain." The others tried to step forward, but Daniel's presence froze them. His eyes, cold and unyielding, dared them to move. "Untie her," he ordered, hands trembling. One of them fumbled with the knots, loosening the rope until Emily was free. She collapsed into Daniel's arms, her sobs muffled against his chest. He held her tightly, whispering, "It's over. I'm here." Then, turning back to the bullies, he let them see the full weight of his fury. "You think strength is picking on someone who can't fight back. You think courage is tying a woman to a tree." His voice rose like thunder, shaking them to their core. "Strength is protecting. Courage is standing for what's right, and you boys have neither." They stood frozen, shame mixing with fear, as Daniel guided Emily toward the truck. He didn't need to fight them further. His presence alone had broken them. But his final words lingered in the air like a sentence passed down from a judge. "Pray you never see me again, because next time I won't be this forgiving." As the truck pulled away, leaving the bullies standing silent beneath the oak, Emily looked up at her husband through tear-streaked eyes. "You always come for me," she whispered. He kissed her forehead gently, his grip around her firm and steady. "Always," he said, "no matter where, no matter when, always." And in that quiet drive home, the fields stretching endlessly around them, Emily realized what those boys never would. True power didn't come from fear or cruelty. It came from love strong enough to fight through anything, and a husband who would face the world itself just to keep her safe. The fields were wide and golden that morning, the kind of day that should have been filled with peace, yet the laughter of cruel boys shattered it. Emily, the quiet farm girl who had always kept to herself, now stood bound to the rough bark of an old oak tree, her wrists tied cruelly with rope. Her voice shook as she tried to reason with them, but bullies do not hear reason, they only feed on fear. Their varsity jackets gleamed in the sunlight, their grins wide and merciless. "Call your husband." One of them sneered, shoving a phone toward her. "Let's see if he's brave enough to save you." They thought it was a joke, a way to prove their dominance, but Emily's trembling lips whispered words they could not understand. "You don't know what you're asking for." To them it was weakness, to her it was a warning. Her husband was not just a man of the fields, he was dealt a force, a soldier who had lived through battles most could not imagine. But to Emily he was Daniel, the man who held her hand after long days and promised her safety in a world that could be cruel. The bullies, drunk on arrogance, dialed his number and put the phone on speaker. After a ring or two, a steady voice answered. "Emily, are you okay?" One boy chuckled darkly into the receiver. "Your wife's tied up and waiting for you, hero. Come find us at the oak tree if you dare." The group erupted in laughter as they ended the call, not realizing they had just awakened a storm. Daniel had been only minutes away, driving home when the call came. His truck roared across the dirt roads, the weight of every mile sharpening the fury inside him. By the time dust rose on the horizon, Emily's eyes were wet with both fear and hope. The boys turned at the sound of the engine, their cocky expressions faltering as the black truck skidded to a stop. The door opened and Daniel stepped out. He wore no uniform, but he did not need one. His presence alone, the way he carried his frame, the way his eyes burned with silent calculation, was enough to silence the fields. He walked forward without a word, his boots crunching against the dirt, every step a reminder that the boys had crossed a line they could never uncross. The tallest one tried to laugh, tried to mask the quiver in his voice. "We're not scared of you," but his words rang hollow, and Daniel didn't bother answering. His gaze found Emily, tied and trembling, and his jaw tightened. He had seen hostages before, he had freed the innocent before, but this was different. This was his wife, his heart, his everything. In a flash he moved. The nearest bully was slammed against the tree with such force the others staggered back. Daniel's voice was low, cold, a growl filled with warning. "You touch her again, and you'll pray for a pain you'll never escape." The others froze, their laughter gone, their arrogance shattered. "Untie her," he commanded. One of them stumbled forward, his hands shaking so badly he struggled with the knot until at last the rope fell loose. Emily collapsed forward and Daniel caught her, wrapping her against his chest, his voice softening instantly for her ears alone. "It's over. I've got you." He kissed her hair as she clung to him, her tears soaking into his shirt, while his eyes rose again to the bullies. What they saw in that moment was not a farmer, not just a husband, but a warrior forged in fire, a man who had stared death in the face and returned unbroken. His voice thundered across the field, each word sharp and merciless. Strength isn't found in cruelty. Courage isn't found in numbers. You boys know nothing of either. They stood there, pale and silent, the weight of shame pressing harder than any rope could. Daniel led Emily toward the truck, his arm firm around her shoulders, but before stepping inside, he turned back one last time. His eyes burned with a promise they would never forget. Pray we never meet again, because next time, I won't be this forgiving. Silence hung heavy as the truck pulled away, leaving behind 4 shaken boys who finally understood that fear was nothing compared to true power. Emily lifted her face toward him as the farm fields blurred past the window, her voice fragile but certain. "You always come for me," she whispered. Daniel pressed a kiss to her forehead, his grip never loosening. "Always," he said, his voice softer now, filled with love that eclipsed his rage. "No matter where, no matter when, always." And in that promise lay the truth the bullies could never understand. Real strength was not in cruelty or intimidation, but in the unbreakable love of a man willing to face the world for the woman he called his own.